November 10th, 1955. A cargo ship called the Tuvalu is crossing the South Pacific when the lookout freezes. There's a vessel out there, half sunk, listing hard, rolling in the swells. No flag, no lights, no answer. The boarding party climbs over the rail and finds no one. 25 people. Gone. Not a single body. Not a note. Just silence. And details that still don't add up. A radio frozen on the International Distress Channel. A doctor's bag lying open on deck, its bandages stained with blood. And a ship that everyone swore could not physically sink. Remember those three things. Every one of them gets stranger. 5 weeks earlier, Apia Harbor, Western Samoa, October 3rd, 1955. A 69-foot motor vessel slips out before dawn, 5 a.m., engines coughing. Her name is Joyita. Little Jewel. At the wheel, Captain Thomas Dusty Miller, a Welsh sailor who loves this boat more than anything he owns. And this boat has a past. Built in 1931 as a luxury yacht for a Hollywood film director. Requisitioned by the US Navy in World War II to patrol Pearl Harbor. And here's the detail that matters most. Her hull was lined with cork, so much cork that men who knew her said she simply could not go under. 25 people are aboard for a routine run, just 270 miles to the Tokelau Islands. 16 crew, 9 passengers, government officials, a doctor carrying medical supplies for the atolls, and 2 children. The trip should take about 40 hours, 2 days at most. So why did nobody ever arrive? Because things were wrong before she even left. The port engine's clutch had failed at the dock. Miller sailed anyway, limping on one engine. Hours behind schedule. He was drowning in debt, and this charter was his lifeline. He couldn't afford to cancel. Was that decision the one that doomed them all? October 5th. Whakaofo Atoll waits. The horizon stays empty. No ship. And, stranger, no distress call. Ports across the Pacific were listening on the emergency frequency around the clock. They heard nothing. A vessel with 25 people and a working radio had simply stopped existing. The Royal New Zealand Air Force launched one of the biggest searches the Pacific had ever seen. Flying boats sweeping nearly 100,000 square miles. Nothing. Then, 5 weeks later, she reappeared, 600 miles off her course. If mysteries like this keep you up at night, subscribe, because what the boarders found aboard has never been explained. But here's where it stops making sense. The boarding party expected a disaster scene. Instead, they found an inventory of impossibilities. 4 tons of cargo, medical supplies, timber, empty oil drums, food, gone, vanished with the people. Pirates? Hold that thought, because pirates don't explain what came next. The logbook, missing. The sextant, missing. The chronometer, missing. Every tool a sailor needs to navigate had been deliberately taken. That's not a wreck. That's a decision. Someone gathered those instruments on purpose and carried them off the ship, along with the dinghy and all 3 life rafts. Then they saw the radio. The dial was set to 2182 kilohertz, the International Marine Distress Frequency. Someone had tuned it. Someone had tried to call for help. But remember, the whole Pacific was listening on that exact channel, and nobody heard a thing. How is that possible? On the deck, a doctor's bag lay open. Inside, a stethoscope, a scalpel, and 4 lengths of bandage, stained with blood. Somebody aboard the Joyita was hurt, badly enough for the ship's doctor to drop everything mid-ocean and work right there on the open deck. Below, the engine room was drowned, water over the floorboards, a mattress draped across the starboard engine, as if someone had tried to plug a leak with bedding, and the port engine still disassembled. The broken clutch Miller had gambled on. She had crossed the Pacific, half dead. Now ask yourself this. Every electric clock on board had stopped at exactly the same minute, 10:25. The cabin light switches were flipped on. Whatever happened to those 25 people, it happened at night, in the dark, in rising water, hundreds of miles from land. The deckhouse told its own story. Windows smashed, the flying bridge damaged, panels torn away. Violence? Maybe. Or 5 weeks of waves pounding an abandoned hull. The inquiry couldn't say, but one thing was found intact, and it's the thing that breaks every simple explanation. The hull. Divers went under her, inch by inch. No breach, no collision damage, no hole. The Joyita had not struck a reef, had not been rammed, had not been torpedoed. Whatever drove 25 people off that ship, it came from inside. And with her cork-lined hull, she did exactly what everyone said she'd do. She refused to sink. For 5 weeks, she drifted, half-flooded, unsinkable, empty. Which leaves one question hanging over everything. Why would anyone abandon the only thing in that ocean guaranteed to stay afloat? Theory 1. Piracy. In 1955, rumors spread fast. Foreign fishing fleets in the area, cargo stolen, crew murdered. The missing 4 tons seemed to fit, but the official inquiry found no evidence of any other vessel. And pirates don't explain the flooding because the water came from somewhere no attacker could ever reach. February 1956, Suva, Fiji. The Joyita is hauled onto a slipway, and investigators finally look under the floorboards. There it is, a corroded pipe in the engine's cooling system, fractured, hidden beneath the engine room floor. She hadn't been attacked. She had been quietly flooding for hours. The unsinkable ship was going down. It gets worse. The bilge pumps, the ship's only defense against exactly this, were found clogged and useless. And when they tested the radio, they found corroded wiring that cut its range to about 2 miles. The distress call may have been sent over and over into a 2-mile circle of empty ocean. Theory 2. Fraud or mutiny. Miller was broke, and desperate men do desperate things. But follow the money, no payout was ever collected, no claim ever surfaced, and not one of the 25 was ever seen again, anywhere on Earth. A conspiracy where every conspirator vanishes forever. Isn't a conspiracy, it's a graveyard. Theory 3 came straight from Cold War fever, a Soviet submarine surfacing in the night, taking everyone aboard. The inquiry found 0 evidence, no sightings, no motive, nothing. Strip the fantasies away, and you're left with the real mystery. Water rising in the dark at 10:25 p.m. and a choice nobody can explain. Because here's the thing, Miller knew, maybe better than anyone alive, the cork. He had told friends in Apia that the Joyita could not sink, that he would never leave her. Dusty Miller abandoning that ship voluntarily? The people who knew him called it impossible. Unless Miller wasn't giving the orders anymore. Look again at the deck. A scalpel, bloodied bandages. A doctor working frantically in the open air. Writer Robin Morm, who later bought the Joyita and spent years investigating, believed those bandages were for Miller himself. The captain, gravely injured, or already dead. Speculation? Yes, but it fits every piece of evidence. Now run that night again, 10:25 p.m., black water rising over the engine room floor, pumps dead, a radio screaming into a void. The one man who knows the hull can't sink is unconscious or gone. 16 crew, 9 passengers, 2 of them children, and a list getting steeper by the minute. What would you do? The official Commission of Inquiry delivered its verdict in 1956. The Joyita was rotten, poorly maintained, and should never have sailed. But on the only question that mattered, the commissioners surrendered. The fate of the 25, they wrote, was inexplicable on the evidence. Case closed, nothing answered. The most credible reconstruction, argued by researcher David Wright in 2002, goes like this. The pipe burst after dark. The flooding went unnoticed too long. Miller was hurt, and a panicked crew loaded everyone onto rafts to escape a sinking ship. That was never going to sink. They left safety and drifted into the open Pacific. But one detail refuses to fit, a detail investigators couldn't shake. A canvas awning had been rigged over the deck house, apparently after the flooding began, meaning someone stayed aboard the half-drowned ship, sheltering, waiting, alive. If everyone fled at 10:25, who built that shelter, and where did they go? No raft was ever found. No bodies, no oars, no debris. Nothing across one of the largest search zones in Pacific history. 25 people, including a 3-year-old child, dissolved into the ocean without leaving a single trace. The families in Samoa and Tokelau never got so much as a funeral. The Joyita herself refused to die quietly. Repaired and resold, she ran aground twice more within a few years. Sailors began refusing to crew her. Locals called her cursed. By the late 1960s, she lay rotting in a Fiji backwater, broken up piece by piece, taking whatever she knew apart with her. So hold this last image: a dark ocean, an empty deck tilting into the swells, and below, in a flooded cabin, a radio dial still glowing on the distress channel, a cry for help, transmitting 2 miles into nothing, while the searchers swept the wrong ocean, hundreds of miles away. Somebody tuned that dial. We will never know who. And if an unsinkable ship losing 25 people sounds impossible, consider this. December 1900. A relief boat reaches a lighthouse on the Flannan Isles, off Scotland. The lamp is maintained, the door is shut, and all 3 keepers have vanished, leaving a stopped clock and 1 oilskin coat still hanging on its hook. That story is next.